I never thought I'd be the kind of person to expose their family drama online. But when you get locked out of your childhood home with nothing but a backpack and $27, pride becomes a luxury. Especially when the one who slams the door is your own mother. It happened in late September, right before my senior year of college. I was supposed to be focusing on finals and job applications. Instead, I was standing barefoot on our cracked driveway, holding my phone like a lifeline, blinking at the screen that read, "Number blocked." That was just the beginning. You see, my mom had always been complicated, loving in public, ruthless in private. To friends, she was the cool mom who brought cupcakes to PTA meetings. At home, she was more interested in controlling my life than raising me. And when I say controlling, I mean she once took the door off my bedroom hinges because I talked back. Privacy was a concept for other kids. The fight that led to the ultimate betrayal started small, like most wildfires do. I had finally landed an internship at a law firm downtown, my ticket out of her suffocating grip. When I told her, she smiled. Not because she was proud, but because it disrupted her plan for me to stay home, get a safe job at her friend's boutique, and be her permanent emotional crutch. "You always think you're better than everyone," she hissed that night, voice low and dangerous. "But you're nothing without me." And then she locked me out. No warning, just me, the dark street, and that last vibrating buzz. Number blocked. But here's where the story shifts. Here's where I refuse to be the victim in someone else's manipulation. I didn't go crying to friends. I didn't sleep on park benches. Instead, I leveraged the one thing she underestimated: my mind. 3 weeks later, I stood in a crowded auditorium, microphone in hand. It was a local TEDx event, and the topic? Surviving toxic families. My speech had gone viral in our city before I even stepped off the stage. People whispered, cried, cheered. I didn't name her. I didn't have to. But the story spread like wildfire. Friends of hers connected the dots. The woman who played perfect PTA mom was suddenly under scrutiny. The boutique job she wanted for me? Canceled. Her friends stopped calling. The smile she wore in public? Gone. And the final twist? I got offered a full-time job by the managing partner of that law firm after he saw the speech. Said I had grit. Said they needed that. I didn't destroy her life. I just built mine so loudly she couldn't ignore it. The victory wasn't petty. It was precise. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't screaming into the void. It's turning the microphone on and letting the whole world listen. For weeks after that TEDx talk, I couldn't walk through the campus quad without someone stopping me. Professors nodded at me like I'd just cracked some ancient code of adulthood. Classmates whispered and pointed, and even the local news station aired a segment about young leaders overcoming adversity. I wasn't used to attention. I'd spent most of my life shrinking to fit into whatever version my mother needed me to be. Quiet, agreeable, convenient. Suddenly, I was none of those things. But here's the truth. No one likes to talk about when you break free from family control. The freedom is thrilling and terrifying. I moved into a friend's tiny apartment, the kind with mismatched furniture and a couch that doubled as my bed. For the first time, I could decide what I ate, where I went, and who I became. And for the first time, I was terrified of making the wrong choices. Freedom, it turns out, is heavy. But the universe has a funny way of rewarding those who take risks. A week after the TEDx talk, I got an email invitation to speak at a national student leadership conference in Chicago. Expenses paid. Keynote speaker. Me. The topic they wanted? Resilience. I sat with that word for a while. Resilience wasn't just surviving my mother's cruelty. It was standing on stage, smiling, when every part of me wanted to curl into a ball and disappear. It was turning pain into paragraphs, wounds into words. What I didn't expect was that the conference would change everything. Chicago was electric. Bright lights, big buildings, big feelings. I walked into that convention center like an imposter, wearing someone else's clothes. But the second I opened my mouth to speak, the room belonged to me. Halfway through my speech, I caught sight of someone in the crowd recording on their phone. Normally, I wouldn't have cared. But then I saw the logo on their jacket, a major podcast network I'd been listening to for years. After the event, they approached me. Ever thought about starting your own podcast? Your story. People need to hear it. That was how Breaking Point was born. The podcast wasn't just about me. It was about everyone who's ever felt like their family defined them, suffocated them, or used love like a leash. I started interviewing others. Students, single moms, foster kids, former cult members. The stories poured in like rain after a drought. Within 3 months, Breaking Point hit the top charts on Spotify. I got invited to do interviews, panels, even write guest essays for major publications. And that's when my mom reappeared. She didn't call. She didn't write. She made a Facebook post. I'm so proud of my daughter, using our family struggles to help others. She always was a storyteller. Thousands of likes. Comments full of admiration for her courage. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. She was doing it again, trying to hijack my narrative. Trying to paint herself as the supportive mother who let me go for my own good. And for a second, I almost replied. But then I remembered. I don't fight in comment sections anymore. I fight in auditoriums, on microphones, through speakers in people's cars on their way to work. The next episode of Breaking Point, it was titled, When They Rewrite the Story. I told everything. Not with names, but with honesty. Brutal, careful, deliberate honesty. And that episode? It broke our download record in a single day. I didn't win because I was louder. I won because I was clearer. And I was just getting started. Success has a strange way of reshaping the people around you. It doesn't just reveal who they are, it reveals who they always were. After the Facebook stunt, my mom started sending messages through mutual friends. Apologies laced with conditions. Tell her I didn't know how to love right, but she wouldn't even let me explain. As if blocking my number and leaving me homeless was something I'd misinterpreted. But the final breaking point came at an alumni event at my university. The dean of students had invited me to speak on a panel about leadership and resilience, a huge honor. I dressed in my favorite black suit, wore heels that made me feel powerful, and practiced my speech until it was muscle memory. Right before I walked onto the stage, a student worker handed me a note. Someone left this for you. It was from my mom. Please don't talk about me tonight. I'm begging you. And that was when I realized she still thought this was about her. It wasn't. It was about every person in that auditorium who'd been told they were too much or not enough. It was about kids kicked out for being queer, for being independent, for daring to dream bigger than the fences their parents built around them. So I spoke. Not about her. About us. About how sometimes family isn't home. It's the people who cheer for you when you can't hear your own voice. About how your past doesn't get to define your future unless you let it. About how resilience isn't built in quiet, forgiveness, but in loud self-respect. And when I finished, the standing ovation wasn't just for me. It was for everyone in that room who'd been told to shrink and chose to expand anyway. Later that night, my inbox was full of messages from strangers who said I gave them the courage to leave toxic homes, to start therapy, to apply for jobs. They were too afraid to believe they deserved. That was the real revenge, living well. And the twist no one saw coming? I no longer needed to win. I already had. But endings are rarely endings. 2 months after that speech, Breaking Point got picked up by a national network. Bigger production, real marketing team, sponsors that actually paid. I hired a producer, rented a real studio, and suddenly, what started as survival became a career. I still got messages from my mom's orbit. Guilt-shrouded invitations, sideways apologies, posts full of inspirational quotes tagged with, "Proud Mom." And I ignored them all. Until one day, I didn't. It was late. I was editing an episode about family betrayal, and I got a DM from a girl halfway across the world. "Thank you. I listened to your story while hiding in my car after my parents found out I was gay. You saved my life." I broke, completely. Ugly cried. The works. And in that moment, I realized something brutal and beautiful. My mom's approval would never heal me, but helping people might. So I responded to one of her posts. Not to her, to everyone else reading. For anyone who's ever felt trapped by someone else's version of love, you're allowed to leave. You don't need their permission. You only need your own. The post went viral. Again, this time not for revenge. This time for release. My mom deleted her account a week later. It wasn't satisfying. It wasn't cinematic. It was quiet, almost gentle. But it was done. And me? I kept going. I started hosting live events. Workshops for people recovering from family trauma. Therapy funds for queer kids in religious households. Breaking Point wasn't a podcast anymore. It was a movement. One night at a sold-out event, someone asked me if I regretted any of it. The podcasts, the speeches, the exposure. I thought about it. Thought about the driveway, the locked door, the $27. No, I said. Because sometimes you don't just break away from a story. You build a better one. And that's exactly what I did, still doing it. Every damn day. Healing isn't a moment. It's 1,000 moments stacked on top of each other. Some gentle, some brutal, all necessary. For a long time, I thought success would heal me. Standing ovations, contracts, recognition. I thought if I became undeniable, the cracks she left in me would seal themselves with applause. But the truth is harder. There are still nights I flinch at sudden noises, still moments when I second-guess my own worth in quiet rooms. You don't grow up being told you're a burden without carrying some of that weight into every new relationship, every project, every compliment you don't fully believe. It took me years to learn that success doesn't erase the damage. It just gives you better tools to rebuild. Therapy helped. Not the kind where you sit neatly and talk about surface things, but the kind where you ugly cry about memories you swore didn't affect you anymore. The kind where you have to peel back stories you wrapped in humor or workaholism and admit they still hurt. One session, my therapist said something I'll never forget. You're not healing to prove her wrong. You're healing so you don't pass that damage forward. That hit harder than any of her insults ever could. Because I knew I didn't want to become another person pretending to love loudly while hurting others in private. I didn't want to parent the way I'd been parented. I didn't want to build friendships on half-truths and performative kindness. I didn't want to become her. That was the real work. Not success, not revenge, integrity. So I started writing. Not speeches, not podcasts, but letters. Letters to the versions of myself I had abandoned along the way. To the little kid who used to line up stuffed animals like courtroom witnesses, practicing speeches before she even knew what law school was. To the teenager who used to daydream about living anywhere else but was too scared to say it out loud. To the college kid, standing barefoot on the driveway, gripping a phone with shaking hands, wondering if anyone in the world could ever love her without strings attached. I wrote to them all. And slowly, I started answering, "I'm here now. I didn't forget you." We made it. No one clapped for those letters. No sponsorships. No downloads. Just me, my journal, and the quiet rebuilding of a soul. And here's the part no one likes to say out loud. Forgiveness didn't come like a sunrise. It came like rain on a rooftop. Slow, Scattered, unexpected. Not for her, but for me. For every time I believed I deserved the way she treated me. For every time I made myself smaller so she could feel bigger. I forgave myself for surviving the only way I knew how. And that forgiveness? That's what freed me. Not followers. Not career wins. Me. One day, years later, I stood backstage at yet another event. This time not in a borrowed blazer, but in clothes that finally felt like mine. A young woman walked up to me before my talk started. She looked nervous, but determined. "My mom locked me out last month," she said, voice trembling. "Your podcast kept me from going back." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just stood there, breathing the same air, two survivors finding each other in the wreckage. I realized then that revenge was never the goal. It was never about making her hurt. It was about making sure we didn't. Not anymore. I don't tell this story for pity or applause. I tell it because someone out there is standing barefoot on their own driveway, staring at a locked door, wondering if this is all they'll ever be. It's not. You're not. You are not your mother's mistakes. You are not your family's failures. You are not the apology you never received. You are the story you decide to write next. And if no one's told you yet, you made it. You're here, and I'm so damn proud of you. It's funny how people think the story ends when you cut ties with the villain. But the truth is, my story didn't end when I walked away from her. It started. Years later, I don't introduce myself as the girl with the toxic mom. That's not my headline anymore. Now, I'm a best-selling author, host of a global podcast, founder of a nonprofit that funds therapy for survivors of family abuse. And sometimes, on good days, I forget I ever begged for her approval. The real ending? It's not dramatic. It's peaceful. I don't flinch when I hear her name. I don't stalk her socials. I don't write speeches about her anymore, because she's not the point. We are. Me. You. Every single person who was told they'd never make it without the people who hurt them. Spoiler alert, we made it anyway. And if you think this story was powerful, trust me, it's just the beginning. I share stories like this every week. Stories of people who broke free, built new lives, and rewrote their futures on their own terms. If you're ready for more, not just revenge, but redemption, subscribe. Now, join this community, because out here, we don't just survive, we build empires. See you in the next one.